As many of you know, I like to make fun of people who take life literally. I like to make fun of fundamentalists. I like to make fun of, and whether it's political or religious or moral or theological or philosophical, I like to make fun of all the literalists who have the truth, right? Well, so the other day I found myself out at Mary's place, and Mary, whom some of you have on your screen there, as you may or may not know, she is this time of year she's very busy rescuing hundreds, thousands of frogs and tadpoles. They lay their eggs in her on the cover of her pool before she opens it up in the springtime. And so she literally has buckets full of all these frog eggs from all these different species. And of course, she's not only a biologist, but she can actually replicate the sound of each frog and tell you what kind it is and where the little tadpole is on its journey. Nonetheless, she takes this very seriously, and she will rescue these buckets and buckets of little frogs and frog eggs and take them down to Brummels Creek, which this time of year is flowing very rapidly, but she will put them in the safe little pools where they can survive the torrents. Nonetheless, so the last couple of years, as some of you know, and this is a small group and special group, so I'm just gonna be very candid today. The last couple of years, I've had a number of fairly meaningful health challenges. I have always thought about myself as a lifelong athlete. I've been a competitor, participant in lots of athletics, and then a couple of years ago, I began to have some issues that needed to be attended to, and I have had an opportunity to run into the guys with the knives up at the Mayo Clinic who have MD after their name. And nonetheless, after they got finished with me, over this past 18 months, I had a chance to learn how to use a wheelchair and graduate to a walker and then a cane, and now I'm getting pretty good at walking, but the legs haven't worked quite like they always used to. Well, the problem is I've had a really hard time letting go of my old image of myself as a vital, healthy, kick-ass, immortal physical specimen to being this guy who has to be really careful about how I move my legs now. Nonetheless, I was witnessing the frog rescue the other morning, and Mary Ellen had brought out my two grandsons, Christoph and Augustine. Augustine's 9, Christoph is 6. And Mary was going to give them instruction in the various stages of frog development down at Brummels Creek as she released some. And nonetheless, this was an educational event. Well, Mary has a very steep hill, about 150 yards down the hill. And when the boys showed up, they, with great glee and enthusiasm, ran down the hill, and of course, the nice objective classroom setting we were going to have didn't quite happen because they immediately ran into the creek and started splashing around and running all over the place and scurrying over the rocks. Well, in the meantime, their aged grandfather was hobbling down this very steep incline, about 150 yards to get to the bridge overlooking the creek. And I had this moment where Augustine and Christoph were splashing and each other and everything and turning over rocks and scaring snakes and their nice protective little shoes that Christoph was wearing. One of his fell off and started going down the creek, and I asked Augustine to go get it, and Christoph would have nothing of it. He just ran on his bare feet over these sharp rocks and retrieved the shoe. Anyway, this was all going on, and great glee and enthusiasm, and these guys. And in the meantime, I'm standing there on the bridge watching, witnessing all this. And I had this moment where I know that I ought to be there in the creek. That's how you say it in Hoosier language, in the creek, for those of you who are not from around here. But I knew I was supposed to be. I'm a participant. I'm not a spectator. I'm out there in the competition, whatever it is. And but I could barely. I with great caution would even consider going down the hill to get to the creek, much less get in it. That would be a disaster at this moment. So nonetheless, I'm standing there and on the bridge, and I'm noticing that Augustine keeps looking up to see if I'm watching as he goes up and down the creek, and of course I am. And you know, he doesn't want me to know that he wants me to be watching, but he wants me to be watching. I'm witnessing this. And anyhow, so things calm down after an hour or so, and they actually make their way back, and Mary goes over all the little parts and pieces of the tadpoles with them, and they release a few into the creek and whatever. But in that moment, I had something of a revelation. I had this revelation, first of all, that Michael, you're old. That may not seem like a big revelation to you, but it was to me, because I have resisted the last couple of years acknowledging that. And I wasn't supposed to be in the creek anymore. I was supposed to be standing on the bridge watching. After all, I'm an old grandfather. And I was supposed to be watching them. I was supposed to be witnessing. I was supposed to be observing. I was supposed to be the one who was noticing them. And I wasn't supposed to be in the creek throwing rocks and splashing and whatever. So that was a revelation. And of course, with that are all the things that go with acknowledging that you're no longer 16, which are things like, oh, gee, I'm going to die. You know, maybe not tomorrow, but pretty soon. And even if pretty soon is 20 years. And, you know, and that's a little sobering. And I'm not immortal. I can tell you, they are immortal. They were immortal in that creek. They were unafraid of the snakes. They were carefree. There was nothing, no danger. And just pure glee, happiness, ecstasy. It was wonderful. And those imprints in their memory will last forever. Well, you know, and then the Paul Simon song came back to me, about the old boxer with all of the memory and none of the moves. And I said, I get it. I get it. And so there was this wonderful revelation that happened and allowed me to sort of move into the phase of life I had already been in for some time, but had simply refused to update my story. Okay, I refused to update my story about who I am in this world right now. And you know what? It was very helpful, because I also realized that while I can't go run and do the things that up until not very long ago I was able to do, at the same time, there's a whole lot of, and I hesitate to call it wisdom, but let's just call it life experience that's now in here, and it needs to be shared. And that one of the most powerful ways any of us can share anything is, of course, through our attention, what we attend to, what we what we give our consciousness, where we focus what we focus our consciousness upon. And it is transformative. When I was 10 years old, when I was Augustine's age, just a little older, I was in a swimming meet, and my father took off work to come watch me in that race. And I can, to this day, 60 years later, I still remember how transformative it was. My father took off work and came and watched me swim. And I was so full, when I got out of that race, I was so full of confidence and I'm sure false pride and whatever else, but the fact that he had witnessed me, he saw me, he witnessed me, and there was something special about that, in that my life was changed because he saw me. And so it's good to find our way to where we really are in our lives, and we do that by getting a story that matches where we actually are. And so the other morning on the bridge on Brevants Creek, I had a transformative experience because I began to remember lots of things, but all those people I make fun of in terms of taking life literally, I began to remember that, you know what? There's nothing more important for any of us than learning to take our lives literally. And by that, I don't mean, when we talk about all this story stuff and this myth stuff that we're dealing with on this journey, we're not talking about playing make-believe and telling each other stories around the campfire. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the stories that hold our deepest relationships to life. And if they are not in concert with the reality of our lives, then we suffer. And if they are in harmony with our actual lives, it's transformative. It's healing, as it was for me. And I can tell you that I have a different relationship to life today because of standing on that bridge the other morning. Now, I haven't necessarily put together the last part of the metaphor. And incidentally, we are all living in a metaphor, which I haven't put together the last part of it, which is I put my hand for steadiness up on a tree that was hanging over the bridge. And as I did, I felt something slimy and realized I had put my hand for steadiness on a tree slug. And anyhow, I'm still working out that part of the metaphor. But with that, I think this is a good place. This is the best I've got in terms of getting us into this lesson. So I don't know if that's helpful to anyone else, but it's important that we learn to take our lives literally, not as scientific fact, but as metaphor. And that we begin to acknowledge that all of the scientific facts and material realities around us are not scientific facts and material realities that then we spin nice stories about. No, no, no. They are all part of our metaphor. They're all part of our myth. They're all part of the story that you and I are living. And sometimes under the delusion that it all makes sense. But the nice thing about a myth and a story is it doesn't make sense, and therefore it makes real sense.